Hello, I'm Dianne Devitt, and thank you for being with me today. I'm especially interested in presenting this series on security, and with me is a friend and colleague, Joseph Russo, who's the Senior Vice President for T&M Executive Protection Agency. Close enough?
T&M Protection Resources, and I run the Executive Protection
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm never going to say it again, Joe. Wait.
T&M Protection Resources.
Okay, and you run?
And I'm the Senior Vice President of Executive Protection.
Executive Protection, okay.
You see,
it's only because I have such a history. I get confused with the name, all right. But everybody, what's in a name? So now we have that straight. So actually this is the second in a series, and Joe is with us to give us some insight on the evolution of the security industry, and he is an actual part of that, being in the Secret Service, being on presidential detail with President Clinton and U.S. Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton, and just kind of paving the way. So you know what I was interested in is just speaking of T&M, because I know obviously to me T&M was a pioneer in the security business. At that time, am I right, Joe?
Yes.
In terms of identifying the need for corporate, and of course it wasn't security. I mean, it was not like you today, but give us a little background.
So very interesting that you should say that. So in 1981, Bob Trotter, who you know very well, who is the T in T&M, by the way, started this company. He was still active police detective here in New York City, and he saw the need to provide off-duty work to police officers, so to supplement their income, but at the same time to fill a need and a void in corporate America here in the city with kind of an upper level security presence of an armed police officer, off duty or retired. And so Bob was very successful. IBM became one of his first big clients, and so he wasn't providing specifically just building guarding that we know of today, but more of a hybrid of a police officer in that role. And he became very successful at doing that. And fast forward to 1999, Bob really produced not only that, but then he got into the security guarding business as well, which are the building guards, the people you see at the front desk here at NYU and others. And he built a very big brand for himself, a little more of a higher level security guard. And so Robert Tucker, our current CEO, as you know, purchased the company in 1999 from Bob. Bob stayed on board. Bob was on board for quite some time. Only until recently did Bob step down. And Robert obviously grew it into what it is today, which is a multi-divisional, very large firm here in New York.
But I mean, in those days, police officers, this was a new thing to work, to work like an additional job, for example.
So I think off-duty work goes back a long way, but it was much more organized. And I think Bob was on the forefront, and T&M was on the forefront of making it a much more viable business, and at the same time helping out a lot of police officers who needed the extra income. So it really served two purposes at that time.
So now fast forward, and much of your business is in executive protection, so that's all corporations, right? So what is your opinion in how corporate America's attitude has changed in terms of integrating security? Like, I remember myself a few years back, one of my clients, and I worked with the CEO and the executive team, and I remember going on a site visit with their director of security, and he said, "You're doing my job." We have, because it's all the advanced work, right? And so how integrated are you, and what's your opinion on the way corporate is looking at security right now?
Well, when I retired in 2004 and came over to T&M to start the Executive Protection Division, we had really one client who had an inherent risk and needed a security program built around him. And that was in 2004, when I think at that time the majority of certainly corporations were well ahead of the game when it came to executive protection. But I still think it was really in its infancy stages when it came to some more individual type clients and folks who were maybe not involved in the big Goldman Sachs, or at that time Lehman Brothers, where they had 300-400 people in their security division. These were more of the spin-offs, people who were leaving those companies now maybe on their own or working with a partner who really didn't have the security infrastructure behind them. And I think they realized the importance of it only because they didn't have it anymore. And so people like me coming out of the Secret Service were very successful at that time because that's what we did in the Secret Service. We understood that the advance and the intelligence would drive, the security program. And I think, a lot of people would just really knee-jerk reaction at that time, or just thinking they needed all the security when maybe they didn't, or thinking they didn't need any security when they did. Right. So we kind of brought in a whole new concept and a way of looking at it, where we took a step back. We looked at exactly what the needs would be for that specific client, and really developed a security plan customized for that particular person, and made sure that it wasn't too much and it wasn't too little, but you always had the ability to ramp up if needed.
So in terms of like corporate, it would be the CEO or the C-suite, literally, that you would follow. And some of these men, they live on a plane, right? And it's not only them. I think the thing for people to understand is you're protecting them. Not so, yes, it's a combination of obviously protecting themselves, but it's the product they represent. That's or right. How contentious it is at the time. Like I remember many years ago with Hoffman LaRoche, and they came out with a drug, with one of their drugs, and the amount of security that was at an event was our staff went through magnetometers, we were all fingerprinted. It was very intense, but the contentiousness of the drug that was coming out caused that to happen. So did you ever, what's your favorite story? Do you have a story?
Oh, gosh.
Without naming company names or without naming names, do you have a story that you can think of?
No, but I think, because the great thing in this business is, and I think in most businesses, you're stimulated every day. I'm challenged every day. I learn something new every day, even 14 years out of the Secret Service. And you're challenged every day. And so, usually, if it's not every day, it's almost every day where something new presents itself. Another challenge where, you're looking at it. Of course, the biggest challenges these days are international travel. So that is a very large part of our executive protection business. And, maybe only 4 or 5 years ago, there were certain areas in the world where clients would go where we would decide, or they would request for a security presence in, some of the more notable dangerous areas in the world. Now, it's everywhere they go, they require at least a component of, say, secure transportation, even in Western Europe.
So just explain that to me. So if I'm a senior vice president, I'm meeting an event, and I have my C level or my C-suite going to a meeting in Europe or wherever it is. Do you travel with them? Do you organize the on the ground needs that they have when they arrive in the destination? Is that the service that you provide, or? Yeah,
it actually starts long before that. So we work with whoever's planning the trip, whether it be the executive assistant, the chief of security, somebody who is their sleeves are rolled up and they're actually planning the actual trip and event. And we like to get involved as early as possible with that because, number one, we can add some input as to maybe where and when they should go or not go, and what might be occurring there that might be completely unrelated to that event, but that we know will be happening during that time, which could have an adverse impact. So we like to get involved early, and then working with the corporate folks, we want to decide on exactly what we need from wheels down to wheels up, in between, as far as secure transportation, if it's event security, if they have their family with them, all of the factors that we could certainly talk about for hours and hours. We do the planning for that in our New York office, utilizing our security partners around the world, and we have about a dozen of them that we've been using for about 14 years.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
And they're from those areas.
You're talking totally global, like from China to
everywhere
South Africa.
There's nowhere in the world our clients can go where we don't have a partner that covers that area, whether they're based there or travel in there. For example, we have a company based in South Africa that covers the entire continent of Africa. And they have trained people in all the countries, So we go to Nigeria a lot, Kenya a lot. So we're able to lean on them for the most part to protect our folks. If we feel like it's a little more complicated, or if there's any other reason to think that the risk might be higher, we'll send one of our folks over ahead
Right.
to make sure that the plans are all in place, and then be there as a close protection person for the executive that's traveling.
So it is a service. You know, it is beyond a service, obviously, and this is what I think it's so wonderful, and how the whole evolution of the business happened is that you're just integrated now into a plan, and you make it happen. So I have a question, like, where do you see it going? Do you have, I mean, because listen, there's so many different types of security, right? I mean, cyber security and how that's affecting us, and personal and professional. But where do you see it going, Joe? Do you have a thought about it?
I do, because the days of just putting a person out there to stand a post and make sure everything was working are long gone. So T&M, we're very fortunate. We have multiple divisions there which support executive protection for the most part, which all starts with security consulting, which is a division of professionals that will go out and assess residences, buildings, work on major projects prior to, during the construction phases themselves, to make sure that they have all their security enhancements in place, and then assess maybe an executive protection program for an executive to see where some of the vulnerabilities, and try to figure out ways to mitigate those. So it really starts with that. That's in-house. And then we have social media monitoring under our business intelligence group. That's a new phenomenon, right? So a lot of the threat-based demonstrations, protests, all the information that we'd be interested in gathering prior to any event, or just in relation to our clients and the business that they're in, is out there. And there's a million different channels now for it to be out there, and people can vent on social media. They can plan demonstrations on social media. They can say really everything except for maybe a direct threat on social media. So we monitor all that for our clients specifically, and for specific events. And then during the events themselves, we monitor live feed what's happening around that area. We drop a little dome over the event space and can see live tweets and everything else going on, and we use some very key words so that we can peel through all the volume. And that gives us a lot of information as to what people are saying about the event from a security perspective, what people are planning to do at the event, and how they feel about the people who are attending the event. So it's been very important for us in designing the plan to know about that in advance, and certainly to know about that while the event is happening.
It's amazing, isn't it? Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, sharing that. Everyone should just leave you with that, is that we think of security, and we think of social media and cyberspace. And, people, yes, you assign someone in your meetings and events to monitor all the social in terms of getting it out there and getting the press and getting the publicity and the attention for it. But there's also another side to that, which is somebody looking at it and saying, hey, are there trigger words here that could be a danger zone to the people at that meeting and event? So thank you for bringing that awareness, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Dianne.